Hi, this is Luca,
And this is Laura,
and this is the Career Beat Talks podcast.
where we bring you the latest insights from the world of recruiting.
From both sides, the candidate's perspective and the company's perspective.
Let's jump right in. Today, I am talking to Sabrina Malter about some very interesting topics. But before we go into detail, just very briefly, and this is, I think, a fun fact, Sabrina and I worked in the past in the same company. So that was where kind of the first connection came about. And then I think we both are passionate about similar topics, even though Sabrina does them, of course, on a much more professional level. When it comes to leadership, transformation, and culture, Sabrina has been an expert not only in-house when we were working in the same company, but then she also works now, I think 2.5 years as a consultant, right? So it's a very interesting person to talk to. And I think for all our listeners, this is going to be a great episode to really learn about, how to identify a good culture when you decide for your next job, for your next career step, but then also as a company, like how can you keep on improving your culture, because that will impact candidate retention in the long term. So many things to discuss. First of all, welcome, Sabrina. So happy to have you here.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me, Laura.
Of course, of course. Well, the pleasure is mine. And I always want to start with a little bit more of a general question. I already introduced you as this expert, right, in leadership transformation culture. Can you share, first of all, what motivated you to specialize in this area throughout your
Yeah.
career?
Yes, that's in fact the impact that I see that I can make in this area. I think there is so much benefit when you have a great culture, a great culture that fosters collaboration, support, and learning together. That's one of my major field, and it's very dear to my heart to foster learning, because then organizations are much more successful, and at the same time it's much more fun and engaging to work within these organizations. So it's really the great impact that and the very positive impact on different levels that motivates me to work in this field.
That is so awesome. Just because this might be a question some people have. When you work on this level, like who are you working with? Is it like the leadership teams of companies, or how can we imagine your job?
Yes, it's on different levels. It's on the one hand, it could be with a leadership team from a medium-sized company, or from a site within a big corporation, or that I have to work with a site leadership team. It could be with single leaders within the
Mm-hmm.
organizations, or it could be with the whole team, that, for example, wants to increase their or to accelerate their capability to learn and to move constructively through change processes, for example. It could also be a team that just wants to foster collaboration, and so we come from this aspect, but still it's also about learning and about development when we come to think about how could we collaborate and support each other, and then
Mm-hmm.
we are relatively quickly again at the topic of learning together, and at of improving together, of innovating together.
That is awesome. I will hold on to the one keyword that you said, which is learning. Because of course, when you are looking at, a change in your career, or you're looking for your next job, I think one thing you should, of course, look for is the possibility to grow professionally in this case. So learning is an important keyword when it comes to your next career job, a career step, so to say. Now, I know you are very, you not only are an expert, but you actually have written a book about it, which I know is still in the editorial process. So very soon, check out the book of Sabrina. But until then, I mean, you already have the knowledge. So I do want to access it a bit. What defines a learning organization? So how can I, as a candidate, kind of understand what is a learning organization? What is a company that does not have a learning organization on the other side?
Yes. A learning organization is an organization that values learning very highly and appreciates its impact to the success of the organization. But that's not all. It's also about really practical learning, or during solving problems, during working, striving towards your goals, as a team, as a company, but also on an individual level. Could be goals that are derived from a strategy, or could be your personal development goals. It's really also not only valuing very highly learning in different contexts and fields, it's also about the skills to learn, which also includes the skills to change, because changing is also a special type of learning. You need a special type of learning to come to new patterns of behavior, to new patterns of thinking and acting, and that's also kind of learning. So it's the valuing, it's the skills, and it's also the culture. It's a culture that fosters learning, that they really have a high level of psychological safety. That means that you are not afraid if you are asking a question that people point at you and say, "Oh, that's really silly." Perhaps she's not really an expert in her field when she asks a question like that. For example, it's also about when you are sharing mistakes that people understand, because this organization you would value learning very highly, understand that it's a great way to support the success, that you share the learning from the mistake, so that not everyone does the same mistake again and again, and not that it's not negative for you, that you share it. It doesn't mean that you want to do a mistake, but if you've done it, then it's good practice to share that. I think that's the concept of psychological safety is quite known, but really living it is still not so common, and therefore that's a great lever to foster a learning culture. It's also about collaboration. It's about supporting each other, sharing not only your mistakes, but also your learning, your expertise, working together, co-creating. For example, sharing, really half-baked ideas, and kind of your first drafts, and getting feedback, like you do it in agile working, and so work together with a greater expertise from many people, so that you use all brains in your room.
Yeah.
And therefore it's really on different levels. And then this culture would also support and on an individual level, an attitude and learning attitude, that you are curious, that you are that you like to explore, that you are open to new things, only open to change, and that you are more resilient.
Right. I loved everything that you've described so far. If everything was in place, it sounds like a lovely place to work, right? And you probably don't want to leave that if you find that. So that's very cool. I especially resonated with the fact of, working in a place, or even building an organization that is open to mistakes and learning from mistakes. I once read somewhere, one great way to success is to fail fastly and then to learn from that. So really, making mistakes is something very positive. And we will talk about, examples and stuff like that. But reminding ourselves to the time when we were working still at Rush, I remember there were sometimes they were called, sorry for the word, fuck up nights, where you were able to talk about, mistakes that you've done and what you learned from that. And I felt that was very inspiring and really helped others to feel safer to also talk about things that they have done wrongly, but then learn from that. So I think there are many things that an organization can do, but then things that you can also try to figure out before you move to a new company, because these things have a true impact. So this brings me to kind of my next question I would have. You kind of also answered it, but let's try to summarize it in some way. Why would you say it is important for, someone looking for a new job, or progress in their careers to look out for a learning organization?
I think when you are looking out, not directly in when you are in the job interview, but before, it's very helpful if you could talk to people who are already employed in the company and just get a feeling about how they are working and how collaborative the environment is, and how open to sharing mistakes, as we just said, and how open to new ideas. It's also it's something you could ask in an interview, but it's easier if you have a friend or some former colleagues who are working there to get their different perspectives, or if you have in the application process the possibility to talk to different people. Another thing that you could really ask in any situation, because it's yes a very clear question, is about the programs which are in place. Is there, for example, the possibility for mentorship programs? Are there peer-to-peer coaching programs or job shadowing programs, perhaps also not only within the company, but from company to company, as an example? Are there kind of learning communities in place, for example? So you could also ask in this question, in this direction. In the job interview, you could also ask ask the person just to describe the culture, not really asking directly for learning, just describing the culture and asking for what's really important there.
Yeah, I love that. These are so many good tips. Maybe just to add on that, I really love the fact, like when we started at the beginning before the interview, you can reach out to some people. And like in the past, people have done that. When I was working, I'm still using this example because when I see you, I always think about this company Rush. So when I was working there, I can remember that people reached out on LinkedIn and were like, "Oh, you work there? Can you tell me a little bit about it?" And of course, I took, the 5 minutes it took me to give them an overview, and I of course liked it very much, so it was easy to give that feedback. Also, like Germans, if you are reaching out to someone who is German, most of the times are kind of direct, so you can kind of trust it that it won't be, this marketing message that you will receive, which is very, very good. And then on top, I also think nowadays you can use like Kununu or even Glassdoor, even though that's not the German but still I see more and more reviews also in Glassdoor about companies. Read through them. Of course, always keep in mind that mostly unsatisfied people will put their reviews there. So sometimes you will see more negative than positive reviews, but still it can give you an overview just to get a little bit of a grasp about it. So I wanted to add that on top of reaching out, but I think reaching out is actually the better way. And then in the interview process, I really like that you gave us some ideas for, questions that you can ask. And then, I think that's the way to do it in interviews. You can also observe a little bit the process, how it is structured. If you go to a second round, do they provide you a little bit of feedback? I think all these little steps in between and how they make you feel along the recruiting process also shows a lot about their learning culture or how they live up to it. Also with Ryan.
Yeah, definitely.
So many things that you can look out for to identify an organization. As mentioned, many important things why you should look out for that. But now let's change the perspective, because I also want to talk from the company's perspective. And here I would be very curious. How can companies build and sustain a learning culture?
Yes, to build and sustain a learning culture, I would recommend to first, or as a first point, to focus on culture and leadership development. That perhaps sounds a little bit fluffy, but that's really the basis, because when you have a culture where people are open to learn, where you have psychological safety, where you have good collaboration and have a good level on respect for each other, then it's much easier to learn together. So therefore, I would definitely recommend to focus on culture first and focus on leadership development and people development, so that people can really understand what possibilities there are and what opportunities there are for them personally when they, for example, just as an example, when you're working on with a team on learning culture and learning attitude. So people will see that I would take a little bit longer to come to this point, but people will see that they can choose. It's not something fixed like a characteristics or personal characteristics. They really can choose what kind of mindset or image of themselves they want to adopt. If they, at the moment, they're perhaps a little bit not so confident that they could reach everything that they want, but that they really could adopt and decide to adopt a so-called growth mindset, which is perhaps also very much known. That means that you think that or assume that not everything is fixed, and yet you really, if you train and put energy and effort into something and give yourself some time, that you can reach many, many, many things. Perhaps not everything, but really many, many things, that you can open many doors. That's just one little step. So when you have started working on culture, and that's something that will go on and on, but you have started to work on culture, you could also start to think about what, when you envision a learning organization, an organization where, which is in your, for your company, in what's your vision of success, and you see in your mind the patterns of behavior, how people interact with each other. For me, for example, I would see that there are many questions asked, as an example, that people help and support each other and give each other rapid feedback. There's much reflection or retrospectives in the group, just as an example. When you have your vision of your learning organization, then you have to decide how to build these new patterns of behavior and perhaps also these new patterns of thinking. And that's really something that you have to practice. A new pattern is not, you cannot implement it. It's really something that you have to practice, that it gets so strong that your old pattern of behavior, which is perhaps demanding, or which could, for example, be just controlling, is kind of overwritten by a new style. And so it's really something that you have to practice. Practicing during your daily work with your normal problems that pop up, and you have to solve them, and with your goals that you are striving towards, your personal, your leadership development goals, and even your technical goals or your goals from that are aligned with the strategy. So you have so much learning opportunities where you can practice, or you can practice all the time. And you just need some methods and techniques to get there and to get started.
Very interesting, because of course this changing of behavior, as you mentioned, takes time, right? So it's very important that you find a method for yourself that helps you every time, like remembering about a process to take until it feels more natural and until you maybe don't have to think too much about it. So I think that's very, very interesting. Beyond that, because this is of course something that will take longer time, right? Are there like smaller initiatives that you could already do to kind of also promote this culture of like, we're open to learn, we want you to keep growing? Like I mentioned, this nights where where you were able to talk about mistakes, right? These type of things.
Yes. What I recommend with my clients is something similar, but perhaps you could also add this and combine that with the so-called fuck up nights, and that is really to interview your leaders for when you have a town hall meeting, and ask them for their mistakes from which they learned the most, so that they share something, and also their learning, and that's also helps people to connect to their leader and to get to know them on a perhaps a little bit different level. And also it's a good way to promote sharing your mistakes and sharing your learnings. Just as an example, very, very shortly, very quickly, you don't have to prepare anything, just ask a good question. And then what I just told you about the learning cycle, and that doesn't have to be really sophisticated. It's really very simple. And if you're doing this iterative feedback that you do in agile working, that you have your first draft of an idea, of a product whatsoever, and you ask, say, 5 colleagues from different groups for their feedback. What do they see that they really like, and where do you see perhaps a room for improvement, and what could be better? Then you also engage in this learning cycle. So you have your first step, you have your own assumption, what's good and how you could go on, but then you get you invite more perspectives, and then you could learn quite rapidly. You could also do a reflection for yourself. And it's not only something that helps the company, it really helps every individual to do perhaps a weekly reflection and think about what went well in this week, and what do I want to improve. And I would also recommend to set an intention, perhaps for the week, for the day, or even, that's what I'm doing, for every meeting or a new situation you get in, that you really check in quite quickly. For if you are practice, it's only 1 or 2 minutes, and think about, what's my intention here in this next, for example, in our podcast interview, what's my intention here in the next meeting, or also at home when I'm with my kids, what's my intention in this situation? What do I want? How do I want to show up? What's aligned with the person or the leader, the colleague that I want to be? And then act accordingly and reflect again. Did I show up like I wanted? If not, what could I try next time? It's really simple techniques that you can use them directly. You don't have to go through a long training process.
Right. Just to add one additional thing that I've heard, it's very, like, I've never heard that before, but one company was doing, they really care about the fact of learning fast from mistakes. So kind of a retrospective thing, but first of all, they started like every week by you, whatever mistake you did throughout the week, you needed to kind of record that because they want to track the mistake. So they kind of gamified it a little bit without, of course, I don't think it is a horrible thing to do. Like, they just tried, I don't know how it works, but then at the end of the week, they transform these mistakes into learning opportunities of the week. And then they really go through that and are like, okay, what did we learn this week through the mistakes that happened in our team? And then it's like they start learning a lot. So I think that's very interesting also, because many times I feel it's your mistakes and then you learn from your mistake, but someone will be doing the same mistake 3 weeks from now, most probably. So also being able to share things, I think it's super important, because you as an organization benefit from that, and you as a person also benefit from learning from the mistakes of others. The mistakes always sounds horrible, right? But many times it's just a little thing, but you could have done it even better. So yeah, very, very interesting. Many, many good insights that I hope many companies can then also learn from, or try to implement and play around with what feels the best for your organization. But then let's really look at why we really encourage companies to go for that and to do this, because I know this is extra work. This takes, extra manpower as well to look into this whole topic of learning organization. But why should a company do it?
Yeah, first of all, really, a company should do that because that's a major contribution to success. That's the main point. And I know that the listeners are perhaps mostly interested in attractiveness to candidates and retention of employees. But if the company is successful, that's also a big point. And I really want to point out that it has many positive effects, but the most fundamental effect is that it's really making your company more successful in their core business, because you have a higher performance, not only through these techniques, but also through the culture, which does help you learn. That's what we just said. But a second thing is that you don't waste excessive energy. What you have if you have this bad culture, the opposite of what we just talked, where people engage in silos, in backstabbing, in the worst case, and you have really much waste of energy. And then you are much more attractive when people when they, for example, ask people who are already working with you, what about the culture, and if it's engaging, if it's fun to work there, because the learning culture is not only a culture that promotes learning, it's also a culture that is engaging and that helps you, to have fun and to enjoy working and to thrive there. And when the people get there and they see what they can get, it really will help them to stay with the company. Also, I'm teaching at university. When I'm talking to the students, they really want to work somewhere where they can develop and where they can learn more and where they can grow professionally and personally. And therefore, I think that's again a very specific factor that a learning organization is very attractive to candidates.
Yeah, absolutely. I have nothing to add on that. I think you summarized it perfectly. So this clearly shows companies should focus on that, and you as a candidate should focus on finding a company that has that established or that is currently in the progress of getting there, because it really makes a difference for your complete career. Maybe one thing why it gets even more important in the future, I feel, would be the fact that, the environment is changing much faster. We are faced with many more changes than we have ever been before. So because you need to constantly acquire new skills, constantly, solve problems that you didn't even know existed before, it's even more important to have this type of organization for the future. So thank you so much for sharing all this. Just to bring it to an end, but still gaining some more insights from you. Based on your experience, what career advice would you give to others about continuous learning throughout a career?
Yes. First, for someone personally, I would really recommend to decide or to think about which kind of mindset or of self-image you would like to adopt. And if it's attractive to you, and you see the benefits of a growth mindset, just as I said before, then really actively adopt that. Team up with something, find your sparring partner or your learning community, because it's much easier to do that together and and you have support for each other. Could be within the company, could be someone else outside the company, and then really, come to enjoy this feeling that's perhaps a little bit uncomfortable when you are learning. Come to reframe that as it's really something that you are in the process of learning something new, the first step of success. I'm convinced, because I did that for myself and I see that for other people, that you really can reframe this. And you celebrate yourself and you celebrate others for their steps, not only for the formal successes, but also for the progress in learning, then you could really learn to enjoy this process. So it's not so stressful anymore. And it's still stressful perhaps in some situations, but this feeling means that I'm on my way and I'm progressing. So that's really helpful. And I want to add something, because you said, okay, it's what's the benefit of all of the learning culture? Because you also have to to give your time, and it's also for someone personally that they perhaps think, oh, but I don't have time for all of this. But you don't have to do it in extra time. You really, as an organization, as an individual, you should, or I would recommend to engage in this learning with your normal things that you have to do. If it's within the work environment, or if it's at home when you're engaging, for example, with the children or whatsoever. So really to think about, do I really need extra time, or are these good tools that help me go faster?
Awesome. Thank you so much. I personally learned a lot. I'm sure that the listeners did as well. Now, before we come to the end, I will make sure to, of course, let to share your LinkedIn link so that people can reach out to you, and make sure to follow Sabrina closely, because the book is coming out soon. So then, or I don't know if soon, but it will come out this year or
End of the year. Yes, it's just
end of the year.
Yes, it's just went into the editing process with the
Okay.
publisher, and it will need some months, end of the
Okay.
year. But I'm happy to connect and happy to open to answer your questions and give some hints where you could find more information for learning techniques, for example.
Awesome. So good. So that's perfect. Make sure to reach out to Sabrina by the end of the year. Make sure to check out the new book as well. I think that's going to be super interesting. So thank you so much. I wish you a wonderful day, Sabrina.
Thank you very much. It was really great conversation.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. We're super happy to have you here. And if you are a company who's looking for talents to expand their team, make sure to check out our services at careerb.de, because there we explain how we help you find top talents much faster. And on the other side, if you're a talent who's currently looking for a job here in Germany, then make sure to also check out our website under careerb.de/talents, because there you'll discover more about our brand new masterclass, where we really guide you step by step on how to find the dream job of yours. But in either case, you can also just send us a direct email to team@careerb.de, because we're also super happy to address all your questions directly there. Wishing you a wonderful day.